Kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another edition of Big Hairy News, the best ofs as we go through the 2024-2025 Christmas New Year period. We're up to March, January, February, March. Hope you had a good Christmas. I think, hang on, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So this is probably Friday. And I hope your Boxing Day was nice as well. I think I've got those numbers right. We are doing best ofs through this time period as everyone gets a bit of a break. The whole crew gets a few days off here and there. We're only doing 11 of them, but because there's 11, we thought we'd do one each month. We're not going to do one for December because we're still in December. But, you know, January through November, best ofs, one each night. And as I've said before, it's the gold of the gold. So we're bringing the gold out of the mine to give to you in the best ofs, but it's such good gold, we're having to leave some gold behind. So this is the best of the best, not just the best of, if that makes sense. Tonight we're going to be having a look at a couple of things around Christopher Luxon from March of this year. He had a disastrous appearance on the TVNZ breakfast show. We'll have a look at that. Also, Clint Smith's going to join us in this conversation from March. That was when Christopher Luxon's $1,000 a week entitlement popped up, and so Clint's coming on board to have a bit of a chat about that, or came on board, probably is technically correct. And then finally, we've got a piece on the Free Speech Union. The Free Speech Union want you to know that drag queens are perverts. It's a very strange thing with the Free Speech Union. They're like, you've got your right to say this, you've got your right to speak your truth, but we need the community to know that we think you're perverts. It's kind of weird saying we'll protect your rights to speak, but we also want to make sure everyone knows we disagree with your lifestyle. It's very clear from the Free Speech Union, and that clip is going to be on tonight's show as well. Thanks for being so much a part of what we've been doing in 2024. Let's start off speaking to Clint Smith about Christopher Luxon's $1,000 a week entitlement, one of the big stories from March of this year. Let's welcome to the show the Director of Victor Consulting and a former Senior Policy and Communications Strategist for Dame Jacinda Ardern, then just Auntie Jacinda. Clint Smith joins us live. Clint, good evening to you, sir.
G'day, lads. I have to say, my beard feels a bit undercooked compared to yours.
Yeah, well, speaking of being cooked, you know, we're all cooked these days because of Atlas Network and those conspiracy theories. It is kind of hilarious how that's all turned a full 180, isn't it? That all those people who are cooked are now saying, look how cooked you are because you're doing all those facts about things that David Seymour graduated from, eh? Anyway.
Yeah.
Hey, Chewie is an angry ginger ball tonight, Clint. I'm just giving you a warning because he is ready to go off, all right, about something that we missed out on last week. So, Chewie, I imagine you've been bubbling all weekend getting ready for the show. What would you have done, Chewie, if I had said, nah, let's not talk about that? That was last week's news. What would you have done? You would have just exploded?
I'd just pop.
Okay.
I'd just pop like a balloon in a ceiling fan. It'd be over.
And Clint, you put out a particularly interesting tweet on, I think it was on Friday, which caused me to contact you, which also says this. This is from your Twitter. If you're in the audio podcast, I'm reading Clint's tweet. It's time to talk about how Luxon bought a 3-bedroom family home mortgage-free in the middle of a housing crisis, converted it into his electorate office, charges taxpayers $45,000 a year for rent, highest of any electorate office, rather than just renting a nearby existing office. It feels like the housing conversation and our hairless leader is due for a thorough talking over. So before we get to the $1,000 a week, and oh boy, do we have comments, including, we'll play something from his stand-up today, where he just flat out lied, where he says this is available to all MPs. Let me make this really clear. What he takes is not available to all MPs. And if you're not aware of that, I'll show you why. But first, Clint, our guest, our fellow beardie, what do you want to tell us about buying this 3-bedroom house, renting it back, and that part of this whole Christopher Luxon housing debacle?
So this is one that sort of got my goat for a little while, actually. It was first reported, I think, maybe a year or so ago that Luxon was charging the most for an electorate office of any MP. And, okay, that's one thing. But then I saw the picture of it, and hang on, that's a house. When did he get a house, and why is it suddenly an electorate office? So I looked it up, and there's a old real estate ad online. It was sold to him in March 2020, just before he became an MP. and it was a family home at that time. There's some interior photos as well, and he's gone. I'm going to be an MP. I'm going to buy a home. I'm going to turn that 3-bedroom home into an office building. When there's what you can't see in that photo is directly across the road is some shops where he could have rented an office.
Right.
And it just, and now he's got this asset, which he's charging the taxpayer $45,000 a year for. And look, MPs need electric offices. That's fair. They shouldn't have to pay out of pocket for those. That's fair. But there's a real, it's part of a pattern with Mr. Luxon that every opportunity there is for him to take a bit of taxpayer money and put it in his pocket, he seems to take it. And it gets me the wrong way. And I have to say that it was my most liked tweet ever. And so I think, it gets a lot of people the wrong way.
I'm not going to say this word correctly because I don't know how to pronounce it, but pecuniary interest. The MPs and stuff have to have a list of pecuniary interest, like money or gift or whatever they get. If they own the property and they're renting it, why isn't that a part of that? Why isn't there some sort of regulations or rules or whatever? I mean, there probably are rules. The rules are, yeah, you can do that, but why isn't there something more? When we worry so much about someone being, like an MP being flown somewhere by a company, we worry about that, right? Because there could be a conflict of interest. What about something like this? Why isn't this a conflict of interest to a government who is now making rules about landlords getting more money back when you're a landlord of at least 5 properties?
I think that's a very good question. There used to be a rule, I think it's still in place, that MPs can't employ their own immediate family members as electorate staff or staff in their offices at Parliament. And that's because there's a conflict there. And I think that the same logic applies. If you're the landlord of the property that has been rented by the taxpayer for your use, that seems a bit open to manipulation. And in this case, we've seen he's made a situation where he is able to say, yeah, I've got this really expensive electorate office, which, it was a family home and I converted it to an electorate office. That's why it's so expensive. Yeah. So please give me lots of money for it. I think people would rightly say, why is that the case?
Chewie?
I am furious. Yes, so someone called me Mount the Chuvius in
very good.
The comments.
There's a t-shirt.
I think, Clint, you're exactly right. If there is money on the table, he is stuffing it in his fucking pockets. Damn the torpedoes. I don't give a shit. It's within the rules. It's mine. And we have 4 examples of this. The Tesla rebate. We spoke about that last year.
Over and over again.
It was taxpayer money going to wealthy Tesla owners. He had an opportunity. He had political gold right there sitting in front of him, and he took the actual gold. He could have gone, yes, I claimed the rebate. I'm morally opposed to it. I'm taking that money and I'm donating it to rural mental health, which is understaffed by the Labour government. I'm a millionaire. I shouldn't be able to get it, that sort of thing. But he didn't. He took it, and then he's actually, it's my wife's car. Actually, it's well within the rules. This, that, and the other thing.
Hang on, you've missed it. You've missed it. It's the I'm entitled to it. We don't even leave him move away from that. I'm entitled to it. And with the Tesla, as me and Chewie were saying all the way through, yeah, you are actually, we're actually okay with you taking that. It's okay. What's not okay is you saying other people shouldn't be, or what's not okay is you saying we're going to change this group of people's entitlements whilst you're taking an entitlement. That's what's not okay about it.
Yeah. Really good point. I'm entitled to it. It's within the rules. Then we've got this electorate office, which is a very clear rort. It's a fantastic personal decision for his portfolio. Absolutely fantastic. Makes absolutely no sense if you look at it literally any other direction. I saw your tweet and I jumped straight on Google and I was like, oh shit, yeah. Like, just take an old shop. It's an electorate office. What more do you need? You don't need a 3-bedroom house with a garage. So there's another case. Same thing, within the rules. I'll take it. I'm not going to look at any other consideration, whether it looks good, whether it's going to damage me politically, whether it's going to show me in a poor light from a leadership point of view, or from a moral point of view. We've got the criticism of public servants getting pay or bonuses to study te reo.
Yep.
He's doing it. The public's paying for that for him. Now, I have, to be very clear, have no problem with the man learning te reo. It's important for a leader of this country to
taking money from the public coffers to do it. We don't have a problem with that either.
No,
but again,
not. What I have a problem with is the hypocrisy.
Yeah.
And when he speaks about it, he says, well, actually, no, it comes out of my discretionary fund. And I want to shake him like the baby he looks like and go, and where does that discretionary fund come from? Taxpayer money, you idiot. And then you have this on Friday, where he is getting the public to pay for an apartment he fucking owns. Freehold.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't want to go to Premier House. He's got a free house. He doesn't want it.
Let's do this. Let's go to this. This is from the stand-up. I was actually going to play last night's article as well, but I think we're at a good point to play the stand-up from today, because Jenna Lynch, we've given Jenna Lynch some criticism where Jenna Lynch has deserved criticism, but she made some pretty good points in the stand-up at the moment. Let's have a listen to what she said to him, a little bit about the moral side of things as well. Have a listen.
What does it say about your character that while you're looking at cutting back food in schools for hungry kids, you were comfortable clipping the ticket for your own accommodation?
Look, I disagree. I disagree. I said, that's...
It's funny how he disagrees with her asking him about his moral standing. I disagree. What, you disagree with I'm being asked about my moral standing?
I disagree that I have morals.
I've explained the situation about Premier House. I want to go live in Premier House. That's where I've wanted to go since I became Prime Minister. The reality is I received a report from Chris Hipkins, which he had received, that said there's a lot of investment needed in there because there's a lot of repairs and long-term repairs and maintenance issues, right? And so I'm trying to find a way to fix those up. In the intervening period, all I've said is, look, I'll stay on in my flat. There are, within the rules, all MPs and ministers get an allowance, and all I've said is...
Claimed it.
Sorry?
No one has claimed it for 30 years.
Sorry, what do you mean? All MPs and ministers have an allowance.
Okay, this is the bit that's not true. This is actually not true, and I'm going to play the lovely Karen Plunkett's going to help us 2 times tonight, Chewie. The first time is when his guest today, who was a List MP, explains how it works, the actual accommodation supplement works, and not everyone gets what Mr. Luxon gets. He gets $1,000 flat fee because he's the Prime Minister. Not everybody gets this, so we've got to be clear. What he says there is either because he doesn't understand, which is always possible with him, or he's just choosing to lie.
Within the rules, all MPs and ministers get an allowance, and all I've said is...
Claimed it.
Sorry?
No one has claimed it for 30 years.
Sorry, what do you mean?
No
all MPs and ministers have an allowance. All I'm saying
no Prime Minister
because Premier House has been available for them to go live in. And so if you live outside of the Greater Wellington...
Now think about that. Premier House is available for them to live in. It doesn't cost them anything. I'm sitting in my freehold apartment, which doesn't cost me anything, so I'm going to take it. We'll just get to the end of this.
In the area, that's where that allowance kicks in. But what I'm just saying to you is, look, my well-being within the rules, I'm saying it's a distraction, not happening.
In that house, but it's not good enough for you to live in.
Again, a lot's happened since that former Prime Minister was actually in that house, and as you know, there's a new report that came out.
Lots happened to that house since 14 months ago. All those Wellington earthquakes and stuff, all those, it's fallen down. She was only in a tent by the end of it.
From an independent group that's not political, that actually is designed so that actually these issues are apolitical, and to make sure that actually it can be invested in. We're working our way through that report. We'll see what we can do to try and make sure that we can maintain Premier House so that it actually is there for future Prime Ministers as well, which I would love it to be there. I would love it to be more available to the community to be used as well. In an intervening period, as I said to you, not taking the allowance, we'll repay it. Don't want to be a distraction.
Okay, so give me a couple of secs here, guys, to put out what we're going to put out, and then you can jump in. So the first thing is, he didn't say I was wrong, right? So he didn't say, yeah, I made a mistake. I didn't quite, like my staff just ticked all the boxes. It was a mistake I shouldn't have. What he said is, it's a distraction. So what he said was, he didn't go, yeah, that was a mistake I shouldn't have. He went, oh, this is a distraction. Now, that I think is quite telling, that he still will not actually admit to any wrongdoing. Now, we know within the rules he didn't do anything wrong, but the question there from Jenna about school lunches was fucking brilliant. And later on in this hour, too, when we talk about David Seymour saying we can't afford school lunches, the thing is, we can afford school lunches. It just depends what you prioritise. And at the moment, big tobacco, big petroleum, landlords are prioritised higher than school kids getting lunches. So we're not going to buy this. Before you jump in, I know I'm ranting now. I want to play you one thing, because remember what he said, everyone's entitled to this, and that's horse shit. This is the List MP from Tauranga, and his surname, ironically, is Luxton, Luxton. I didn't even know. This is him explaining how the system works for getting your accommodation supplement. Have a listen. If you miss it, I'll explain it at the end. Have a listen.
Parliamentary services. This is all new to me as a new MP. Parliamentary services pay a accommodation supplement, some kind of allowance that you send in your tenancy agreement, and you still pay it out of your account, but that comes in with your pay.
So what MPs do is they provide evidence for how much their mortgage or their rent is, and they get reimbursed. He has no mortgage and he has no rent. It's a freehold property. So when he says everyone's entitled to this, it's not the case. The Prime Minister is entitled to a flat $1,000 a week fee. So please don't listen to him when he says, yes, it's in the rules, but this is not like everybody else. This is a special entitlement that the Prime Minister gets, that the previous 30 years, not one single Prime Minister has taken. Now, I finished my rant, but it just occurs to me, Clint, that you've probably spent some time in that house when you were working with and for Jacinda Ardern. Is it a hovel that's falling down?
Well, we went there. We had a Christmas party the first year after Labour was elected, and that was the time I was allowed to go there. No, it's really fancy. I mean, it's a mansion for a prime minister. It's dated, so you go inside, and it kind of looks like your grandma's house might look like, or even like your grandma if you grew up in the 80s. So, it looks a bit old-fashioned, but it's all fancy as hell. Like, it's all nice. It's just dated. So, now I've heard that upstairs in the Prime Minister's apartment, it does need some refreshing, and maybe they've knocked some walls out and stuff. It was built in a different time. But you're not... Hipkins, said, look, it's habitable. It's not a matter that you can't live in there. Absolutely. Just on as Chewie said, there's the politics of this, right? So, why didn't he say, I'm asking Kiwis to cut back? In fact, I'm forcing them to cut back. I'm cutting their jobs. I'm cutting their benefits. I'm cutting left, right, and centre, and say, look, it's tough times. I'm part of it too. I'm cutting back. I'm not taking this allowance that I could. Why didn't he have the sort of sense to do that? But there's what you call the front page test, right? I've sat down, I've been with leaders of parties in these situations where, not obviously this situation, but things that's like, some bad news is going to come out. What do we do? How did he go? Mark Delder must have called up his office on Thursday to get the information that he was taking the allowance. Mm-hmm. His advisors and senior ministers would have said to him, this is indefensible. And he must have said, no, I think it's fine. And he went all the way through until Friday afternoon, did a stand-up where he said, I'm entitled, it's my entitlement, I'm entitled. And only after that did he finally realize that it wasn't politically sustainable, because his political opponents, every time he went to cut something, when at the budget, when he's going to cut free prescriptions for cancer patients and the disabled, would turn around and say, wait a minute, you're taking $52,000 a year, aren't you? why are the cancer patients having to pay for their prescriptions while you're taking $50,000 a year? Finally, he realized after, he must have had his advisors in his ear saying this is impossible for more than 24 hours before he cottoned on to it. But that front page test is sort of a backup for when your own internal morals fail. Like, the first step should be, no, I can't do this. I can't take every bit of money from the taxpayer that's available to me when I'm worth $30-40 million at the same time as making the poorest Kiwis poorer. Where was the morality that stopped him doing it before you get to the stupid politics of it? Why didn't his internal morality stop him? It's so little money for him as well.
Yeah.
This is nothing to a guy with $40 million.
But he's entitled to it.
He's entitled.
Why is everybody angry? I'm entitled to it. It's like every time I came at this on Friday, and I just like, either his advisors are completely dropping the ball, or he's ignoring them. And when I saw all those interviews, when I saw him do those interviews, 1, 2, 3, and then late afternoon, I'm paying it back because it's a distraction. And I just wanted to go, mate, I would love a $52,000 distraction. Far out. You're talking like a full-time minimum wage earner makes $47,000 a year.
Yeah,
before tax.
And yeah, but it's before tax, Chewie. So that means they get about maybe 40 or 38 in their hand. This is tax free. This $52,000. And the other thing that's going to irk all of us is remember this little piece of audio.
We want a government that cares about how every single dollar is spent, because every single dollar the government spends is ultimately a dollar from your pocket.
So what we do here, Clint, quite often is we're actually quite generous. I think we will hold this government at least to the account they held the last government to, or to the standards they set for themselves. And they are just coming short so much. Here's also a Twitter from the same kind of era. Oh, sheesh, I just put myself there. I didn't mean to do that. It's revolting. Oh, I didn't mean to do that either. Holy crap, what's going on? There. Sorry about that. We're back. Here's a tweet that he put up around the same sort of time. The days of taxpayers being treated like a bottomless ATM are over. I'm also wondering, I put out some tweets in the weekend. One of them said something like, I wonder if he got a $1,000 a week from the ATM, or maybe Chewie, at what point was he going to come out and say, oh, well, my wife books my accommodation, and we don't discuss her finances. My wife's apartment. I'm renting it off her. We don't discuss her finances. That's off limits, Chewie.
Now, I would have loved to have been in the room of the Labour Party social media team fucking fighting over each other to drop in exactly what you put up. Right. And then going, next minute, boom, easy. Social media win. That went round New Zealand in record time. You could hear the fucking sonic boom on it. Yeah. But yeah, it's a complete, like, it's the hypocrisy. It's the complete failure of any political thought process at all. Of like, this is going to look bad by anyone that looks at it. I'm a millionaire. I don't need it.
Fundamentally, it's a class thing.
Yeah,
there's a class thing here, right? Because he was telling the poorest New Zealanders, you are using taxpayers as an ATM. How dare you? He was accusing the poorest New Zealanders of being bludgers and ripping people off, and yet here's this guy taking every cent he can get a hold of. And it's the same with the landlord tax cuts, right? We have the government saying we want to ensure we're getting value for money out of feeding poor kids lunch, but are we checking if we're getting value for money from giving mega landlords $1 million a year in tax cuts? Yeah. No, because he's a landlord. They're part of his class, and it just doesn't apply.
I have just remembered another one we can chuck in. Remember how much criticism the government got over flying in Air Force planes? Expensive, untenable. We're going to fly commercial. That's certainly not what's happening now. He wants to fly in our Air Force One, And it's another example of just hypocrisy and the baubles of office.
It's also this idea that it's not just money. I mean, remember what they said they were going to do with they're talking constantly about Labor's, too much bureaucracy, Labor, too much bureaucracy. We're going to put a whole new layer of bureaucracy into WINS and get those young people looked after. So their bureaucracy is okay, but Labor's bureaucracy, too much bureaucracy. So let's not get also kind of taken away with thinking this is just about Luxon and money. This is about national and policy as well. Those guys have got too much of XYZ. Oh, when we do XYZ, no, that's just good policy. But those guys doing the same sort of thing, too much, too bad. How do you handle that in the Prime Minister's office, Clint? Like when you get accused of hypocrisy, whether it's there or not, what goes on? What are the conversations?
Well, I'm struggling to recall one that was about hypocrisy directly, but there are circumstances that always come up for a leader. Maybe one of your caucuses misbehaved or something, or one of these things. And the first thing you do is always get the information out as quickly as you can that you have. You don't muck around. But the other thing is, if what's happened is indefensible, you don't try and defend it. You own it, and you say, so some of the times leaders look the best is when they are able to say, that thing that I did or that my minister did was not on and it's changing. People like that because that's what they expect from a leader. What they don't want from leaders is this evasive stuff. And it does set in governments, but we've seen it right at the start from Luxon that it's always excuses. Like you say, he said, the reason I'm doing this is I'm not taking the money as it's a distraction. He didn't own it and say, no. He could have said, look, I was taking it as opposition leader, didn't really think about it, but I am asking Kiwis to tighten their belts. It's tough at times. It's only right I do it too. He could have still salvaged the position and come out with that line, but he refused to. And I guarantee, because Chris Bishop and Nicola Willis, I went to uni with Bishop, I know them well. They are smart operators, and they would have been say that stuff to him, but he doesn't. He's not listening.
So here's a question, Clint, and this is something Chewie says all the time. All right, over there. This to me comes off then as a CEO who's like, "Why are you questioning me?" rather than a politician. And Chewie's point often. Chewie, do you want to say it? You can say it. I won't say it for you.
He is not very good at this. He's
the
not
world of politics.
Yeah, that's true. But what I say to my friends who are still in Parliament and still with Labour or the Greens is, but the left lost to him. Yeah. So, I do think. I mean, look, the public think he's not very good at politics. He's rating 25% as preferred prime minister. That's lower than Hipkins. It's lower than when Bill English took over. They both lost elections within a year. He's not going to face that test that early, but his popularity will not increase. It will be in the toilet after this. And so, if the left can mount a decent campaign in 26, they're in with a chance.
Yeah, I mean, that's a test for me. Is my mother, who does not care for politics, sent me a text message on Friday going, "Have you fucking seen this?"
Yeah. Same with my wife. She got into politics, but she saw that and she was like, "What is this? How can he be cutting the school lunches and taking this money?"
And then we had backup arrived for him later that day on Friday, the crusader for taxpayer value for money, David Seymour, sees absolutely no problem with it, and basically implied that anybody doing a job shouldn't be out of pocket for doing that job. That's some great news that the government is now happy to pay my bus fare. And I assume I get 3 meals out of it. I don't know. But I'm looking forward to the unveiling of this new policy for workers.
I think that reflects that David's never had a real job.
So, Clint, you've been an advisor in those positions, probably you still are in your consultancy work. You're today sitting now in the office of Prime Minister Christopher Luxon, and he says to you, what do we do from here? What do you say to him?
I think right now he's dug himself in too deep into it's a distraction line, so he has to sort of hope it moves on. And the issue is now he's really associated what's happening at Premier House with him, and so when a decision is made about renovating Premier House, it's going to be Luxon wants 10 mil dropped on blinging out his mansion.
Yeah.
So that would be my concern as an advisor, is looking forward. As an advisor, you've always got to be looking at what's going to happen downstream of this,
and then what?
Yeah, exactly. It's very easy as the leader to get caught up in the moment, but it's the downstream that'll matter. And yeah, he even though he stopped taking the money now, is still emblematic. It's still going to be, when they cut through prescriptions, it's still going to be, but you're the guy who took the Tesla money, you're the guy who got the taxpayer to pay for your Toyota, you're the guy who is pocketing money from the electorate office, and you were taking all that money for your apartment in Wellington, but you're saying that cancer patients have to pay for their prescriptions now. It undermines the morality of what they're doing even more than the landlord tax cuts.
Yeah.
So it's a problem. I don't envy his advisors.
Yeah, no, I the thing that resonates with me about what you've just said is he can't really turn his back on what he's done now, because he is dug into deep. If he kind of comes out now and says it was all a mistake, it'll be like, yeah, okay, hi PR team on the 9th floor. That sounds pretty obvious. You're losing, so you're explaining it in a different way. So I feel the same. I feel like he's really got to just write it out. Maybe they'll make some amazingly horrific, terrible. Maybe they'll just say all school lunches are gone tomorrow, and then all of a sudden the whole focus will go elsewhere. Maybe that's their plan, Chewie.
Is it unfair of me to say that?
No, whatever you're going to say, it's not. Whatever you're going to say, Chewie, it's not unfair. Sorry, what are you going to say?
He says he wants to live in Premier House, but maybe he just has an aversion for staying in New Zealand's most fancy state house.
There is, I wonder if, not about what he's done or what he's not done, but there's probably a conversation here about this sort of thing as to when you upgrade it. I know when the president of the United States moves out of the White House, they have like a week and they completely redo it to how the new president wants it. I mean, maybe the thing from here on in is, election time, you renovate, you touch up, you redress, whatever, and you've got a couple of months through that summer to get the thing tidied up. I'm not trying to give him an out saying it's not good enough, but maybe there's actually some logistical help that could come from this, so this is never a conversation again. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, if like a lot of houses, you should do some maintenance and some renovations every now and then. And maybe it hasn't been done because it was politically unpalatable, and it's just got to this absolute shit show now that they've let it go for so long. But I mean, a lot of the beneficiaries that Luxon has been bashing, saying that they're leeches and they're going to be sanctioned and they're bottom feeders and that sort of thing, some of them live on state houses that desperately need maintenance as well.
Yeah.
In a way, we were talking about class, but in a way, it's kind of nice that that's something that's shared between all state houses at that age.
But let's not forget, it's not as if it's falling down Premier House. I mean, Peters was living in it from 2017 to 2020. It's it's a livable house, but if he lived in it, he wouldn't have been able to get the money. And I think that goes back to it. He's sought every way he can to maximize the amount of money he's getting off the taxpayer.
That's actually a really interesting point, Clint. That's a really interesting and really subversive point if that's the way he's thought. If he's gone, I can live in my grandmother's house, sure, but if I live in this one, I get an extra $50,000 a year for ivory back scratches. That is a really pessimistic way to look at it. And if that's right, it's pretty revolting, to be honest.
I think the chain of behavior points a big fucking arrow at that, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like it's happened too many times for it to be a momentary lapse of judgment. It's a consistent pattern of behavior at this point.
There are a few chats there, Clint, that want to say good day and thanks. I think I saw Spider's in there. There you go. Spider Hoof came up board with a super chat. Thanks for the $5 saying, hi, Clint. Love your work. And Peter's also jumped in saying, Luxon offends New Zealanders' egalitarian sensibilities. Even John Key tried to make a show of reaching out. Luxon is just out of touch. Yeah, as soon as you say not a single Prime Minister in 30 years has taken this, then he's too late to do this, but you have to say it was a mistake. That's the only way around this. My staff filled out the paperwork. It was a mistake. We've stopped it, and I'm going to pay the rest back. But just like, I'm entitled. Yeah, whilst you're cancelling entitlements for other people because of austerity. So anyway, hey Clint, it's been an absolute joy speaking to you, sir. Thank you so much for coming on and having a chat with us today. You're always welcome. And we can call you a friend of the show now. You only have to come on once, and then we can claim friend of a show. He's former senior policy communications strategist for Jacinda Ardern and the director of Victor Consulting. That is Clint Smith. Clint, thanks so much for joining us. It was a blast, man.
Thanks, guys. Cheers.
Kia ora again, team. Thanks for sticking with us. Hope you're enjoying the best of 2024 as we take a bit of a break through this 2024-2025 Christmas New Year period. Very, very important people to us from our audience are our patrons. Our patrons help pay the bills, especially through this Christmas period where we're not doing as much merch and we're not getting super chats and stuff. It's the people who are our patrons who get behind us and who help us pay for all the stuff that you're doing and watching right now, all the technology we're using, all the internet we're using, the power for what we're doing. It's all based on what the patrons do. If you are interested in being a part of what we do, patreon.com/Big Hearing News, patreon.com/Big Hearing News is how you do it, as we aim to continue bringing you this independent news network right the way through 2025 and beyond. Thanks for your support, and however you do it, even if it's just watching and sharing, it's really important to us. And let's get back to the best ofs. This is actually probably mostly about the Free Speech Union. Since we've been doing this, I've been saying to you guys that the Free Speech Union are a right-wing psyop. It's like we hear about what the Atlas Network does. Whether you believe or don't believe that's it, we're not going to get into that. But the accusation is they get into a lot of free speech groups and they use the kind of cover of free speech to put through alt-right talking points. Now, I want to show you this because the Free Speech Union 99 times out of 100 supports right-wing propaganda, and they stand up for right-wingers to do what they got to do. Now, there is one thing that they often go the other way for, and that's drag queen story time. Is that right? That's right. Yep. Drag queen story time. And this is an episode where the Free Speech Union are talking to Karen Oliver about drag queens and defending their right to say what they've got to say. However, the difference is the Free Speech Union also want you to know that drag queens are perverts. Not my words. Don't be offended by me. I'm just giving this to you. You need this information. So they come out and they stand up for drag queen story time and for their right to speak, but they want us all to make sure that we are aware that drag queens are a perversion. Have you ever heard them say the opposing of something on the right? I would say not. And even saying that, who says all drag queens are left-wing? You know what I'm saying? But they're taken as. And so I want to play this for you. It's only 60 seconds. And I just wanted to show for you this, as Chewie says, this, what does he call them? A pile of melting pancake batter. And the Free Speech Union talking about the right for these people to say what they want to say. But by the way, they're perverts, but the right for them. Just have a listen.
Get it?
Yeah, but councils also have to reflect the morality of their communities.
Oh,
and
really?
I come back to it, a basic thing. This is blokes who dress up as parodies of women reading stories to children. It just seems perverted to me, Jonathan. Does it not seem perverted to you?
Personally, I absolutely think it is.
You think it's a perversion?
I am willing to accept. I certainly think it is. I think a lot of other Kiwis do as well. But
there you go. I think it is. A lot of other Kiwis do as well. Now, he goes on to talk about, about Bethlehem College, and some people might see that as perversion. But he didn't come out saying that about Bethlehem College.
No.
But he did want to make sure that we were aware that the spokesperson from the Free Speech Union is standing up for the right of these people who he's calling perverts to say what they want to say. And I wanted to spell that out to you. There's more about this, Paul, but I can see you frothing at the mouth there when we're going to move to talking about what Brian Tarmac is up to. But you first, please, sir.
This argument always bugs me. I've grown up around drag queens. I know a number of drag queens and drag performers, and I know a number of people who work with kids and children. And there's one thing that's really sort of common in what they're all doing, and it's that they're going out to entertain and find ways to keep people doing fun stuff, interesting stuff. Drag Queen Story or Drag Time Story Hour, we vet it, you run it past police checks, you make sure that all of those safety procedures are in place as you would for somebody who is running a scout troop or a Girl Guides troop. They go through the same stops and checks. The only difference is that this is a performer who is performing as somebody opposite to the gender that they generally present with. It's no different to performers who do like the human statues, for example. They're not statues, but they're still performing. It's such a beat up because it's an easy target, because it's something that seems to be clearly visible that the right wing love to froth at the mouth about, and they come across as nasty no matter how they do it. And the FSU doing we respect their right to free speech, but they're perverted. That just completely undoes any kind of sympathy that they would get from anyone who thinks that they do actually stand up for free speech.
It also gives the bigots who are sitting in this camp of free speech the right to continue their bigotry. It gives permission to those free speech absolutists, which doesn't exist, by the way. There's no such thing as free speech absolutists. No. If you think there is, try sending a death threat to a politician. You'll find out pretty quickly there's no such thing as free speech absolutum. But there's these people who say that. Now they also have permission to go, oh, okay, so I can take a half step back and pretend that I'm supporting their work, but acknowledging that this is what I really think of them. That's what it does as well.
Yeah, it undercuts everything that they say they stand for.
Hey, g'day again, team. Hope you're enjoying the best of in this Christmas New Year break period, the best of BHN 2024. Just wanted to remind you as well that the merch shop is open during this time period. One of the ways we support ourselves and pay a few bills is obviously through the merch that we sell. We are sending out merch all the way through this Christmas period. So if you want to head to bhnshop.nz, you can see that there are some Chewie foo-foo shirts there, Chewie blowing his foo-foo, some Nikki No Boats product there, both t-shirts and hoodies, buffer gear there as well, t-shirts and hoodies, and also the pattern Chewie BHNs. The other thing that's become quite popular in this last wee while is the sticker range we've got as well, which mirrors the merch on the t-shirt range that we've got. Again, we will be sending out merch during this Christmas New Year period. So if you order it, it will be on a courier or on the post or whatever you call it, certainly within a few days, and we'll get it off to you. You'll also find a few specials on that for limited stock. The stock, especially in the hoodies, is limited. It's actually limited in everything, but more so limited in the hoodies. So if you head to bhnshop.nz quickly to make sure you secure what you want from the merch that we have currently going. Thanks for supporting us through 2024. Let's get back to some more of the best ofs. I want to bring your attention to something in this very first clip. This is going to be probably a good half hour, because when I mean a good half hour, I mean a good half hour. The very first part of this, right, is one of the more patronizing things, of a lot of patronizing things I've heard from Christopher Luxon, when he tells Anna Burns-Francis what to focus on and what not to focus on. Because, of course, she asks him about the $800 million gap, and he pivots to Labour bad, $170 a week increase in rent. Right, so let's get into this, shall we?
Good morning, Mr. Luxon. Your tax break for landlords has a pretty big difference in numbers, what was promised to what we see now, $800 million. How'd you get it so wrong?
Well, what we're doing here is we're making sure that life gets easier for renters across New Zealand. Under the previous government, rents went up $170 per week.
Did you see the pivot? It was like a gold-winning, ice dancer. Did you see it?
Oh, it's all about renters.
It was beautiful. The way he just...
Ooh,
well, Anna, I'd just ask you to focus on the people that actually matter here, which is renters that are doing it tough. And what we've said very clearly is when you load on costs on landlords, whether through interest deductibility, the bright line, that has just meant that rents have gone up in this country over the last 6 years, $170 per week on average. What this is about is making sure that we restore interest deductibility. We're doing it in a phase.
Don't you love that look? That was like what the fuck are you talking about?
That is not what has put costs up. Costs were trending up before all of those things because these guys, these landlords, and don't you dare say mum and dad landlords because we know it's not fucking them. There is less supply for people to rent, and these guys know that they can jack up the price. And this has been hit. This is not a Labour problem. It is not just a national problem. They're both as fucking guilty as each other because neither of them have been able to get a handle on the fact that there needs to be more places for people to live, but they don't want to tank people's investments. So this pivot into saying, oh, we're just doing it for renters, doing it tough, bollocks. Just an outright fucking lie.
You think that's bollocks, mate? You wait till we get through some more of this interview.
Way, in a responsible way, and ultimately that means that puts downward pressure on rents. That's a good thing for renters across New Zealand.
A very quick swerve to $170 a week, but we still have the $800 million, and you're saying who's it going to impact? Well, it's going to impact taxpayers. There's less money coming in, so there's less money for you to dish out again. That's quite a substantial chunk. How come you got it so wrong?
No, we're making sure we've campaigned.
Yes.
Did you get that? What's the tell? Come on, chat. What's the tell? The stutter is always a tell. We know this now.
Yep.
The Elmer Fudd stutter is, there we go, the Porky Pig. Exactly right, team.
No, we're making sure we've campaigned on making sure we restore interest deductibility for landlords. Why are we doing that? Because we want to increase the supply of rental properties available to renters in New Zealand.
But you costed it at 2.1 and it's going to cost $2.9 billion. There's a huge gap. So how did you get the number wrong?
Remember last night how I said the one thing I did appreciate about Chris Bishop on Q&A was the answer to the question? Like, honestly, just reflect, not saying I liked the answers to his questions, but this is the example of what we've had from National to this point, whether it's him or whether it's Nicola Willis, just literally refusing to answer the question and spew out talking points. And this is what this interview is.
What I'd say to you is that we have looked at the program, we've looked at the policy, we've looked at our economic conditions.
You would say it 2 times.
Yeah, we've actually look, Anna, I'll level with you.
We've worked out what we can afford, and what we're delivering is relief to landlords so that they can actually put downward pressure on rents. This is what this is all about. Interest deductibility. If you owned a cafe versus owning a rental property, you would actually be able to use it as a deductible, a legitimate business expense, and every other.
Anna Burns-Francis, and I'm going to spoil it, does something beautiful in this conversation, right? And I haven't heard anyone else pick it up, so all credit goes to her. The National, and I'm spoiling it because she says this later on, but I'm going to do it anyway. The National Party keep talking about any other business, interest deductibility. And Anna Burns-Francis goes, but hang on, any other business, they also pay tax on profits. There's no capital gains tax on houses. So you can't compare it to any other business when you doesn't pay tax like any other business. And I just thought, oh, you fucking genius. That is so good. So when they say any other business, it's not apples with apples, because the other businesses, when they make money, when they make capital gain, they pay tax on it. When you sell houses and you make capital gain, you do not. So
absolutely.
It was a very, very, very good point that should be now repeated every day for the next 3 years.
That's absolutely it. That is the thing that is underpinning why our housing market is so fucking cooked.
Yeah.
Because here is, if you've got money and you want to make more money, here is a place where tax is not looking. So why would you put your money literally anywhere else? It is more risky to put it in a business. There are taxes on profit and stuff like that. You got to put it in housing. You got to buy an old house from someone. Don't build a new one. That's risky. Buy an old one that's already there. And so that is how we've built this absolutely fucked, crooked system that we've got, that now no politician wants to change, because the moment that people's portfolios start shrinking in value, or they see their home's estimate go down, people will lose their fucking mind and will turn into Mad Max real quick.
All right.
We created this. It's taken 40
business
years.
Around the world and in New Zealand.
Sorry, 40 years?
Yeah, it's taken 40 years. When they changed the rules about tax around houses, 40 years, none of them have changed it. That's what's causing the problem.
That's what I mean. Labor takes a lot of blame for having absolute power to do whatever they want and not fixing a lot of shit. Right? Honestly, there's a lot of blame to be laid at Labour's feet.
This has added cost to landlords. As a result, they've taken rents up over $170 a week. We're caring about renters, and this is what this is doing, restoring supply of rental properties into the rental market in New Zealand.
We can debate that in just a second, but I just want to bring us back round to the initial question, which I hate to repeat, but I'm just really not hearing how the number jumped from 2.1 to 2.9 without an explanation. You were assuring us before the election these were rock solid, your economic plans. You said at 1.6 of September, Nicola and I are good with numbers and good on economics. So how do we have an $800 million difference on just one part of your tax plan?
Well, I would dispute that very strongly. What you saw as a coalition government that's come together. No, I just dispute your numbers, to be honest with you. What I'd say to you very clearly is that we have an active national party that both campaigns.
Beautiful again. These aren't her numbers. They're not Anna Burns Francis's numbers. They're the numbers we've been given. They're the government's numbers. So there's a little pivot. Yeah, exactly. Frosty got it as well. There you go. See? Her numbers. No, they weren't her numbers. But he just he couldn't. Oh God, I'm going crazy with things. He pivot.
Campaigned on restoring interest deductibility because we know how important it is, and the great news is that we're doing it, and actually that's going to get relief to renters, and that's really important.
Can you still say your numbers are rock solid for everything that you forecast before you got into power, on the numbers that you promised and that voters were assured were rock solid? Can you still use that same phrase?
Yes, I can. And what I'd say to you is what's even better, Anna, is that we are
I wonder if there's
also looking at a very dynamic
question here that's been missed. Like sometimes when you have to take them by the hand, like Jack Tame did on the weekend, and say, are the numbers today, what we've learnt today, are they the same as the numbers you told us about before the election? And then he has to say no. And then, because I get him to admit it first, and then he has to say no. So I'm no criticism overall, but like take them a step backwards and say, are these the numbers you gave us before the election? Blah, 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 blah. Yes. Are those the same numbers as today? He can't say yes to that. And then, like we saw with Chris Bishop, he had to finally admit that this was more beneficial for landlords because Jack Tame just went, walk you into it. Now you have to actually admit it, basically.
Dynamic economic environment. We've inherited from a government that actually had massive cost overruns, that didn't fund school lunches, didn't fund farming drugs, and ended up spending a heap of money on stuff that didn't deliver. And so as those things come to light, we're facing up to those challenges too, whether it be school buildings that haven't been funded, whether it be ferry projects that have had massive cost overruns, whether it's been...
Oh, that one didn't date very well, Mr. Luxon, for the news this afternoon.
$250 million wasted on Auckland Light Rail and not a single metre of track built in 6 weeks. 6 years. Those are the things that we're also surfacing and we're having to deal with dynamically as we manage an economy that's in a pretty tough place.
So, as I said, I get the sense that they've been given instructions to blame Labour. That was one of the things. Chewie, I've got a couple more clips I want to play. One of them is a bit longer, so I want to not spend too much time debating now. But is there anything you want to say to that, to that now?
He seemed very, very sure that rents are going to get cheaper.
Yeah.
So my question to that is when and how much?
Yeah.
Or alternatively, really?
Yeah.
Because it's never happened. Never, ever, 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 ever have you reduced costs for landlords and they have passed on those reduced costs to their tenants because the choice that they're making there is, I could make more money by keeping the rents where they are. My costs have gone down. I'm now making more money. Why would they pass that on? Where is the incentive, or where is the stick to landlords to reduce rent? It's all by choice. They're not going to do it.
100%. And as we said last night, remember, this is the government who, when in opposition, said that that the supermarkets would not pass on the profits for 15% off fresh fruit and veggies. Now, if supermarkets aren't going to pass on the profits, why would landlords? You can't say that supermarkets won't do it, but landlords will. You know, you can't say that. You have to actually play an even hand. Second part of this conversation is really interesting. Chewie, at one stage, believe it or not, he tries to sell the idea that under Labour, there'll be some landlords that would just rather leave their houses empty than taking rent because that's just, they'd rather not lose money and just leave their houses empty. I don't think he realises if they leave their houses empty, they'll lose a lot more money because they haven't got any rent coming. But he does actually make that as a point. And this is the part where Anna Burns-Francis also talks about the capital gains tax and not being the same. Stop comparing it because it's not the same. And we start off the part of the conversation that basically Anna Burns-Francis is saying there's no evidence anywhere that rents will go down.
Can we go back to your point about it, the impact it will have on rents? The idea has been sold to us that it will help with the cost of rents, that it will drive down the price of rents. There's no actual evidence of that, is there?
Well, the official advice is it will put downward pressure on rents, no doubt about it. And the reality is it's ultimately determined on the supply of
Why
rental
is there no
properties
doubt
available
about
in the
it?
market. It's the same thing that happens
That's
in
actually the
when you
number
buy
one,
a
isn't
house.
it?
Well, that'll ultimately determine it. And so what we're doing is if you're a landlord and all of a sudden you've been slugged with a policy which was to remove interest deductibility, which is insane. It doesn't happen in any other business in the world or in New Zealand. You've added that cost on. You've just passed that straight through to your renter in higher rents. The same challenge has been with the bright line test as well. So we want to remove those costs that have been loaded onto landlords because they just go straight through to renters, Anna.
Well, I mean, you talk about other businesses, but other businesses pay tax on their profits and landlords don't pay tax on capital gains. So there's an argument to and fro, whichever way you look at it here. But if we look at rents in particular...
Sorry, you're mixing the drinks. That is economically incoherent, what you just said. Yeah.
You are comparing it to every other business and saying that landlords deserve the same sorts of benefits that we see in other sectors. But I'm asking you for the evidence... That rents will actually be impacted this. Even last year, a Treasury report from the Housing Technical Working Group, August last year, said wage inflation and supply and demand were the two biggest drivers. They don't even mention that interest deductibility is going to have the impact that you are promising it will have, people.
Well, this is interesting as well, because what he's promising is downward pressure. Right, and like you say, Chewie, how much by when is what we want to know. No one's asked that question, I think, yet. But what he says is downward pressure. As we said last night, downward pressure doesn't necessarily mean anyone's going to reduce rent, because we talked about the equal and opposite can often be true. The equal and opposite from downward pressure is more profits, right? Equal and opposite from downward pressure on renters is more money for landlords. And people aren't going to throw that away. People aren't going to just say, oh, here, you can, tenants, you guys can keep that $100 a week. Landlords are gonna make more money, like National were accusing supermarkets of taking GST off fresh fruit and veggies. Anything quickly, Chewie?
No, carry on.
It's one aspect of it, Anna. We have to grow the economy. We've inherited an economy where it's actually declined in growth in the last 3 of the last 4 quarters. There's lots of things we have to do to get the economy.
Blame Labor.
Economy moving. This is one piece of it. The official advice we've received is to say that this will put downward pressure on rents, and that
official advice, when they like it, they'll use it. When official advice says you have an $800 million hole, I question your numbers. I question your numbers. Your numbers get questioned. Official advice, downward pressure. Official advice, downward pressure. Official advice, 800 million? No, not the case. Not the case. I don't see it. No.
It's self-evident. If you own a property and all of a sudden you can't do interest deductibility or you've got constraints around the bright line test, they are costs that you end up incurring. You end up either withdrawing your property and not putting it onto the market and making it available to renters, or you lift up rent prices. And that's just...
He just said so you'd withdraw the property. Now, he puts his foot in it. And look, gold, silver, bronze all goes to Anna Burns-Francis for this, because she comes to the conclusion that they might sell their house. And how is that a bad idea? If they're not going to rent it, maybe they'll sell it. Yep.
Everybody knows that a rental property that is sold disappears into dust like Thanos snapped his fucking fingers. That's just known. That's what the experts tell us.
Okay, please, cartoonists out there. I know there's a couple of you that watch. I want to see this freeze frame in purple snapping his fingers. That's what I want to see. BigHearingNews@gmail.com.
Essentially what's happened. Rents have gone up $170 a week.
Blame Labor.
And that's understandable. Costs have been added to landlords and therefore they pass those straight through to renters. That's why we've been saying for a long time, we posed it right from day one. We said it's a dumb idea. It's a stupid idea. Why would you add costs to landlords? And so we're finding a way to phase that back in.
Are you saying landlords would seriously have an empty house as opposed to renting it out? They wouldn't put it back on the market?
Yeah, why would you own a house? Why would you put money into owning a house if you actually and making it available to renters if you don't make a return on it? Yeah,
so
because you've added so much.
So rather than the 500-600,
mortgage,
so you're just going to pay the mortgage rather than getting that. So in other words, let's say that your costs are $600 a week and you can get $500 a week rent for it under the Labor system. You're going to go, no, I'll just pay the full 600. It's not worth my time getting 90% of the money. I'm just not going to get it all. I honestly you can almost see, maybe we'll go back. You can almost see when his lips are moving and his brain kind of goes, where am I going with this?
I'm a multimillionaire and I don't know how interest rates work.
But honestly, you can see. I reckon you can see it and you can hear it. There's a moment where he kind of goes, hang on, what am I saying? Lips, what are you saying? Brain hasn't caught up quite with you yet.
And so we're finding a way to phase that back in.
Are you saying landlords
Here it comes. No rush. Internet tonight, man.
would seriously have an empty house as opposed to renting it out?
What's the moment?
They wouldn't put it back on the market.
Yeah, why would you own a house? Why would you put money into owning a house if you actually and making it available to renters if you don't make a return on it?
So it's
because you've added so much. Well, no, it's not going to sit empty, is it? We've got to make a landlord has to be able to make houses available in the rental market. If you actually add costs to them, it's less attractive for them to actually do that.
Sure, if they didn't
they
rent
might
it
sell
out,
the
what
house,
would they
Anna.
do?
They might sell the house.
And then someone owns a house. So that's okay, isn't it? Then
Well,
someone owns a house.
But Anna, come on. Yeah, are you seriously saying to a rental person who cannot?
Anna, come on. You're trapping me. Anna, this is not how it works. You treat me better than this. Anna, come on, Anna. Don't do this to me, Anna. You're embarrassing me.
And then someone owns a house. So that's okay, isn't it? Then someone owns a house.
But Anna, come on. Yeah, are you seriously saying to a rental person who cannot afford a house that actually there's less supply of houses available for rent? We need to increase the supply of houses available for people to buy.
Fucking pause that. Are you saying, Anna Burns-Francis, that people that only have enough money to rent at New Zealand's very, very fair, very reasonable rental rates, they can't afford to buy a house because they can't save for a deposit because of the fucking rents that they're all paying, because we've cooked the market, all of us. And then when a landlord decides, I can't be fucked with this, I'm going to sell my house, when that renter turns up with the fucking 160,000 that they've managed to scrape together over the last 15 fucking years, and maybe they're in for a shot of buying it off the RV, and they turn up to the auction or they turn up to the open home to find themselves surrounded with people with 2, 3, 15, 25 houses and all the equity, and they can just fucking throw crazy money at it to have another house. And that person that scraped up to get the deposit finds out that it doesn't fucking matter. Back to the rental market, you scrubs. Work harder, get a better job. You suck. This man has never experienced this ever in his life. And this is what happens when you vote for these people that haven't lived a real life and haven't experienced the things that normal people experience. He's fucked off to another country. He's come back and run an airline. He's got all of these houses fucking debt free. He doesn't even have to worry about the fact that interest rates have gone up. It's good for him. Like, fuck this guy and fuck how out of touch these people are.
Mount Vesuvius just blew a top. Mount Machu Picchu just went off, didn't he, team? Yeah, he does actually then tell us all about how he's got no mortgage on any of his properties. He makes himself very, 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 very kind of average man today later in this conversation.
Do you think this man has ever gone into just a normal bank branch and talked to a normal loan officer to see what his debt to value ratio is? Or do you think he calls up his mates at a head office of a bank and gone, cut me a deal?
Yeah.
Do you think he even has to do that? The level that he is working on is unrecognizable for the majority of this country.
Right, this has got about 20 seconds to go. Let's just get to the end of this part.
you seriously saying to a rental person who cannot afford a house that actually there's less supply of houses available for rent? We need to increase the supply of houses available for people to buy. We need to increase the supply of houses available for people to rent. We need to increase the supply of houses available for social housing and state housing across this country. That is our major problem in the housing market that we have, is a lack of supply.
Chewie, we're going to move on to a third part of this conversation, because even though we've given Anna Burns-Francis some pretty big sort of props tonight, there was a couple of young fellas, you may know of them, they're on the internet, who had a bit of a chat about this last night. Let me play you this little clip from this, I don't know what this show's called, Two Gorgeous Guys or something like that, I'm not entirely sure. Particularly the last, there's only about, I think there's only about a minute towards the end of it, when we talk about what's going to happen from tomorrow with every journalist around the country. Have a listen. This is the party that was saying the reason that GST off fruit and veggies wouldn't work is that the supermarkets would not drop their value, they'd just make more profit. So why do they say it's going to happen to supermarkets, but all of a sudden landlords are going to be all altruistic and they're going to pass it on? Of course they're not. So a landlord can either make $100 a week or $180 a week. Oh, no, we'll just keep it at 100 and knock your rent back by $80. Of course they're not going to do it. It's fairy tale stuff, Chewie.
People in the chat that have rented or are currently renting, when ever have you received a rent reduction? Don't worry, I'll wait. I've rented most of my adult life and have never received a reduction in rent.
Yeah.
That I've been thankful that a landlord has kept the rent the same year on year.
Yep.
But I have never received a reduction of rent. And this is why this is fucking fantasy. That because they've got interest deductibility, they're suddenly going to wind back the rent. It's absolute bullshit fantasy. They could open it up to every renter in the country.
Yeah, it's pretty
There's
good,
not
actually.
going to be a single person that comes back and goes, oh yeah, my landlord did.
Yeah.
Absolute rubbish.
Unless the politicians do, because they're smart, because everyone knows that's going to be the first question in the next election cycle. How much did you reduce your rent by? So he should probably do that. And if he's got people watching this, they should probably tell him to do that. And I might have just given him an out, because obviously if it wasn't said to them, of course he's not going to reduce the rent of his, because then it becomes a better investment. Anyway, we should let him, actually, now we should ignore everything we've just said, remove our brains and listen to how Luxon explains it. So last night, whoever those two young upstarts were talking about this, and one of the things that kind of bit older, bit less eruptive one said was, he is going to get asked how much he's reducing his rent for his rentals by, right? We said that last night. Someone's been watching, Chewie, because guess what was a question to him today?
Ooh.
Now, this is where he makes himself unrelatable on a scale you could not believe. I'll play it first. I like spoiling things, but I'll play it first.
Yeah, you've been on a tear of that tonight.
I have. Here we go.
It's going to make a difference to the rents that you charge your tenants for the properties that you own.
Look, ultimately that's a decision for me personally, but no, this won't do. It won't make any impact for me at all.
You mean
Okay, yeah, but hang on. But this is the unrelatable bit. Why won't it make a difference, Chewie? Why won't it make a difference? It won't make a difference because he has no debt on any of his rentals. Because this is about interest deductibility. So he on one hand is saying it won't make a difference on mine because that's how wealthy and unattainable I am. And I also won't put any downward pressure on my rent. So basically he's saying I'm not going to reduce the rent on my tenants. I don't get the benefit of the deduction because I own them freehold. So it means I will still just charge them what they're being charged right now. The downward pressure that will come through the community will not be impacted, will not impact my tenants because I don't get the interest deductibility. So on one level, he's saying something that is almost impossible to think about. But on another level, he's also showing how his plan for downward pressure won't work for some properties.
it's going to make a difference to the rents that you charge your tenants for the properties that you own?
Look, ultimately that's a decision for me personally, but no, this won't do. It won't make any impact for me at all.
Gap.
You mean you're still going to raise the rents? It's not going to put any downward pressure on the rents that you charge your tenants?
Well, sorry, no, what I mean is I don't have any mortgages, Anna. So this is about interest deductibility on mortgages for landlords. And I'm in a different situation. I'm very fortunate I don't have any mortgages.
Okay.
So relatable, our Prime Minister. I own 7 properties, 5 of them are rentals, and I have no mortgages. So very relatable. Go for it,
So hang on. Because if you draw a line there, it's like, oh yeah, if we reduce costs for these landlords, right, there'll be downward pressure on rent. So therefore, if you have no real major costs, you own your houses get free, then people should be living there just for the costs of the building, like maybe your yearly rates and maintenance, right? There's no cost to the mortgage. Is that what we're talking, Luxon? No, fucking course not. We're talking about market forces where you will charge rent as high as the market will bear. The rent that you set has actually very little to do with your costs. Any real estate agent or property manager will constantly be putting pressure on you. If your rent is lower than what it is for the average of the area, your property manager will be telling you to put the rent up. Your accountant will be telling you to put the rent up. Why are you giving away this value for free when no one around you is? That is where rent comes from. Not the bright line test, not interest deductibility, not healthy home standard. They have a small short-term effect. But overall, it is market forces. And this government, the government of business and numbers, laughably, does not understand that. They're chipping away at the edges of a castle that they don't want to knock down.
The other thing that he misses, it's funny how he talks about, patronisingly talks to Anna Burns Francis about her not sort of getting it. The reason he doesn't get it is that downward pressure implies rents across the whole area will go down. So let's say you've got a rental property in Brooklyn, in Wellington, right? Downward pressure means rent becomes cheaper. When it becomes cheaper, supply and demand, it will drive other rents down, because all of a sudden the house next to you is $200 cheaper than this one. So why would I live here? I'll go there. So these ones have to reduce it. So he can't even figure out that if this theory that he's floating around would work, i.e. downward pressure, the rents in his freehold property would go down, because you're not going to be able to rent them out at exorbitantly more than the ones in the neighborhood around you if that downward pressure was to work, which I don't believe it will. But he can't even go think. Okay, of course, if downward pressure comes to the neighborhood from my houses, then I would just, change my rents to whatever the market would dictate. He just goes, no, because mine are freehold. It's like he's not smart enough. I mean, he's obviously smart. He's done business and stuff, and he's done his things, but he's not smart enough and quick enough in the moment to not fumble over that and tell the whole of New Zealand that he is so wealthy that all of his rental properties have or that's not actually, can I tell you something? That's not even good business, Mr. Luxon. I know some property investors, and what they typically tend to do is they get interest-only mortgages. And then the equity grows and they buy another one. And they put none of their money into the houses. And it's horrible, I know. But that's what smart investors do. So even what he's doing, telling us that, is showing us that he's got too many ivory back scratches. And he doesn't fucking know how to invest. That's what else it tells us, Chewie.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great because he said the thing. He's acknowledged what the problem is and how to fix it. We need to build more houses. That's the thing. But nobody's done it apart from the previous Labour government that got more houses built than ever before for decades. The previous national government sold off all of our social housing. And before that, when they had the chance to cut some red tape, we ended up with the leaky home scandal. So, it's the government needs to build more houses. They need to provide for people as they have done since World War II, since before World War II, actually. They need to do that. And they need to make sure that there is incentives for people that have money to invest in building new houses. We need to add housing stock to the market. That is the only thing that will really change market rents. And yes, and there needs to be an acknowledgement. They are not going down. We can build more houses. The rents are not going down.
Yeah.
But the more houses that get built, the more options that people have, then there is competition. It will hold rents at the same place for longer.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
that is part of inflation as well. We want to tackle inflation, right? Well, people's rents going up constantly. It's part of inflation. People having to pay more interest on their mortgage as part of inflation. This is such a big problem that nobody's got any fucking big ideas on how to change it, because making a big change is going to fuck off the real estate holding class in this country. And they're the ones that are making donations.
All right, team, that's us for another episode. We'll continue these best ofs right the way through till we start going live again on Monday, the 13th of January. If you've enjoyed this show, then you can thank, along with me, our patrons. Our patrons are the ones who are responsible for being able to bring this to you, who have also kept us independent and free from any kind of outside pressure from outside sources. In the week leading up to our break, so in the week leading up to the 20th of December, these patrons joined in those 7 days. Gray, Dr. Nat, Kathleen, Jimmy's Nan, Cezanne Big Q, Caleb Watson, Lance Juverton, Ed Hyde, Howard Vicarage, Doris Queener, Kiwi Bear, Syntax Error, Rena KH, Kerry Moses, Max Power, and Sue Locke. All those people joined in the 7 days leading up to when we went on break. If you have joined since then, you will not see your name in the credits because this is a pre-record. Probably will see your name in the credits in the last week of pre-record because I will update it. I also want to mention David Thompson Rules, who in those 7 days, he also upped his membership. He upped levels from, I think patron to super patron. So thanks to David Thompson for doing that as well. If you've enjoyed what you've seen tonight, if you want to be a part of what we do, if you want to be in the credits that are about to roll, patreon.com/Big Hairy News. Stay safe out there in New Zealand. Remember, driving 5 kilometres per hour slower will only get you there a couple of minutes later. Don't take risks on the roads, and we will see you when we come back live again on the 13th of January as you continue to enjoy the best of the best of the best ofs here in BHN.
Help us settle